It's 12 o'clock in Frisco, Texas, and it's time for Smoker Broker Radio with Robert Mesh, a.k.a. the Smoker Broker. Robert is the owner of Small World Realty and has employed hundreds of real estate agents in his 17-year career. He has instructed and mentored over 10,000 real estate agents at the highly acclaimed Champions School of Real Estate and is considered an expert in Texas residential realty. Robert is also an advocate of true entrepreneurial spirit and has helped many to transition from corporate America into the world of self-employment. And now live from the studio to your world, the Smoker Broker.
Hey, welcome to Smoker Broker. I'm Robert Mesh. I'm the guy they call Smoker Broker. Happy whatever day it is to you whenever you see this. Some people watch us on archive. Some people watch us live. It doesn't matter. Hope everything's going well. Hope you're cruising into the weekend. It's funny. We rarely talk about barbecue on the show because the show is geared towards real estate, and that's what in the initial we wanted it to be both, but then in the end the audience that we cater to is real estate. But I rarely talk about the barbecue side, and I decided today we're going to open it up for a couple of reasons. One, the world champion national championships are coming up in Kansas City at the Royal. I'm actually going, so I'm looking forward to that, although I am not in the exclusive you have to be in the invitational if I could do a real Royal champion. But they have two competitions. They actually have the big professional one, and then they have the big other one where there's like hundreds and hundreds of smokers across the country. So we're actually doing that. So we're kind of gearing into our paying a little more attention to what we do, probably a little bit stronger than normal. And it had barbecue on my mind because of that. So we rarely talk about anything barbecue. Guys always tell me they watch the show and they're like, you never say anything about barbecue. You don't give any type of tips or whatever. So I said today I'm going to try to start giving a few more tips just for the hell of it, just because it is part of the stuff that I do on the outside. So those of you who do smoke, one of the things that took the longest time for me to figure out is, and I get this all the time, people, I literally get no less than 20, if not 50 texts a week from people asking random things when they're smoking, what they should do, and it's great. I love it, and I've never faulted anybody for doing that for me. I love to help if I can. But one of the biggest ones I get is they're trying to time when they're going to have their brisket ready for like 15 or 20 people. And they're sitting there like, oh, I hope I can get it. There is no such thing as a brisket being done at a certain time. And they're all different. They all take different timing. They all have different cooks. Depends how much fat's on it. Depends how big they are, how small they are. It depends if it's windy outside, if it's hotter outside. It messes with the fire. There are tons of things that can happen. You are never going to be able to say, I'll start my brisket at 11 p.m. the night before, and it will be ready at 6 p.m. the next day. So I struggled with this in the beginning because I thought, this has to be timed perfectly. One of the best tips I ever got, and I did not know until like 3 or 4 years into it, you don't have to have that thing ready exactly when everybody comes over. In fact, you can almost have, and this goes for your shoulder as well, you can almost have that piece of meat done literally 7 to 8 hours before anybody even comes over. You take it, you wrap it in aluminum foil, which it already should have been wrapped in aluminum foil. You put it in a cooler that it barely fits into. Just don't put it in a big cooler. Find a cooler that will fit the brisket or the shoulder. Put it at the bottom, and it's aluminum foil, double wrapped at least, maybe even triple wrapped. And then take two like garage towels or blankets, stuff that you don't want in the house, and push it and compact it into that cooler and make it real tight, like super tight, to where like you don't really think anything's going out there, and then you close it off. Literally 7 or 8 hours later, you can open that. That thing will be burning, smoking hot. And all those years, I sat there trying to time it, stressed out. The best advice any of us can give you when you do it, especially when you're cooking for larger groups, be done like at midday. Be done at midday. Time it to where you're done at midday. and then just put it in the cooler, and then you can pull it out when you're ready and help everybody else out there. It's one of the best tips I ever got. Got lots of them. I don't share them enough. Told myself I was going to start doing that, not only for my own agents, but for everybody who watches randomly out there as well. So there's your tip for today. Hope everything is going well. We had a great conversation on our last episode about inspections. In fact, I knew it was going to be a great conversation because I knew we were going to need a part 1, a part 2. Hell, we might even need a part 3. But I rarely do 3 shows in a row on the same material. So even if we need 3, it's not going to be the next one. Got my buddy over there, Mike Dellis. He was at the last one helping me out. And this is actually one of his expertises as far as things that I probably rely on him more than myself when it comes to expertise. He is actually quite the handy guy. And it helps when your real estate agent knows something about the actual mechanic side of the house, because some of us don't. That's not something I was ever graced with. I am not very good on the engineering side. And, I know this about Mike because we go way back. We're not just business partners, but we're really good friends too. And he has that knowledge when he's able to go in the house. He knows certain things that need to be done. Whereas I'm like, I'm not so sure how to do that. Let's just say I'm not the guy that you want doing that. Hey, this is an easy 1, 2, 3 installation. That's the last one that you want doing that, because if someone says it's going to be fixed, it takes 2 hours. That'll be 2 days or 2 weeks for me, and then probably something messed up where one screws. I'm the guy that there's always a screw that's in the wrong place, and I don't know what to do with the other 5 or 6 that were left.
Thought you were going to say screw loose.
I got a screw loose. All right, I got plenty of those. So, but Mike's a lot more temperate on that. He probably has a lot better knowledge when he goes through and we analyze inspections, and that's interesting because that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. Last one, we set the stage for, why are we doing it? What do we see? What are some of the concerns we're going to come up with? Now we're actually going to go through and we're talking about when that inspection goes through, what might we see? And then we're actually going to finish the show with, how does this play out? How do we ask for it? What are the alternatives that they can do? And at what point does it have to be done? And when does it have to be done? So we're going to talk about that. And believe me, we won't even get to all of it because it's just too long, too much material in there because it is a vast process. All right. So Mike, they go in there, they do their inspection. It's a set criteria they have to use. They're licensed by the state of Texas. So they have to do exactly what the commission tells them to. And they're going to go through and draft it up, and then they're going to write a report. So the first thing a lot of people ask us is, should the buyer be there during the inspection, and should the agent be there? There's no right or wrong answer. What do you like to do? What is it that you prefer? What do you think should be done in that situation?
I actually don't think the buyer should be there during the actual process, because really, what are they going to be doing? They're going to be standing around. There's nothing for them to do. I do believe that if there always is going to be something that comes up in the inspection. So to actually be able to see it and go over the things that the actual inspector says, hey, these 3 things I wanted to show you. Then you're not reading about it in a report. You're reading it and you're seeing it. And then you can kind of understand a little bit better about what the actual issue is. Yeah.
And I think the best advice there is a blending of everything he just said. I don't think the buyer should be there the entire time. We are told that is time for the buyer so they can really assess the house. None of us really believe the buyer should be in there funneling through, because it really ends up being a second showing for them that they really didn't need. We do agree, though, that we, along with that buyer, probably ought to show up at the end of the inspection.
15 to 30 minutes.
Because what Mike just said, we can get the report, but it's easier for us if we see the report right there, or they point out this is going to be on the report. We can actually go to and go, look, this is what they're talking about. Are we comfortable here? So I do believe that the agent should be there for the last few minutes, and I do believe the buyer should be there for the last 2 minutes. I don't think that any agent should be there the entire time. And if they are, I'm like, you obviously don't have nothing to do. So that would concern me. I will say this, and it comes up. this comes up from your clients, not so much from us. We do not have to be there for the inspection. And the reason being, that person's licensed too. That person's been approved via Trek as well, and they have access into the house. So a lot of buyers, a lot of sellers, sellers think that we are the ones. Like we'll have the seller say like, hey, look, nobody was there with that guy. I'm like, they're licensed per the state. They're supposed to be there by themselves. So they have the criteria they're supposed to meet, and they're executing those programs in place. But, you know, for us to be standing around, we don't have to watch them. They're already cleared their backgrounds. We don't have to be concerned about that. We don't have to be there the majority of the time. Quite honestly, we might actually hinder the process if we do that, because we'll start talking and BSing and drawing it out longer than it has to be. Showing up at the end, usually the inspector knows the major ones. Normally they'll be like, I think we got a problem on the foundation. They'll tell you, and that's the things we're going to discuss. All right. So I do believe that, and that's a great explanation. That's how it does actually operate in the field. And now you at least know the etiquettes as to should you be there or should you not. That's what we just said is really what the industry expects of you in expedition. So that's your first takeaway, and a show that's going to have many today. They go through. We talked about we schedule them early, and Mike, we talked about the option being short, and that's why we're doing. But what's the real problem with the time frame? What is it that we're worried about that we're going to have to possibly deal with if there are issues?
The negotiation.
Yeah. And let's talk about that. We're not talking about negotiations that the carpet needs to be cleaned or maybe a little pebble stones in the window. What happens when the inspector flags the foundation, says, I think it might need some foundation work? Now
you got to have a foundation guy, a real foundation guy come out, you know.
So Mike's giving you two takeaways there. The inspector says, I think we have some issues. Well, we told you on our last episode, that's not the person that makes that decision. So if we're on a short time frame, now we just got hit with, we need to bring another inspector in there to look at it. Time is of the essence here. We only have, especially if it's a 3-day option, we don't have much time. Those structural engineers, those folks are degreed, and not at like running a train. They're degreed at being able to measure a foundation, tell you whether it has problems or not. They don't just say, I'm ready tomorrow. So on a short option, one of the main things we have to worry about is, are we going to have time to get the next person in there? Now, what normally happens is if we believe that someone needs to go in there, we're obviously going to ask the seller for what?
More time.
Yeah. We're going to extend. We're going to be like, y'all, we need to figure out what's going on here. We can't do this in less than 24 hours or so. So we're going to go through and we're going to request time, maybe an extension, so we can get another professional in there. Now, Mike, did the other takeaway here. This is probably the most important takeaway of this episode. You don't ever, especially as a buyer agent, you don't ever send somebody in to do a foundation inspection that sells foundation work. That comment alone should be enough for the average person in America, I said the average, and I mean barely, to know that that doesn't sound right. Because that person goes in, they make money if they sell. There's obviously a little bit of bias. Oh, I probably could use a pier here, a pier there. We want
20.
Yeah, that's ridiculous, by the way. But so another takeaway, we're going to keep takeawaying. If someone tells you to put a lot of piers in the house, it can be very dangerous. I'm not talking about the solidification of the foundation. Common sense dictates if we put, like Mike said, 12 or 15 piers on one side of the house, and we say it stabilizes it, it will never be fully stabilized the rest of its life. At some point, there's going to be that gap where the piers are and they're not. You can see this in some houses too. All right, so that's a takeaway there too. We want the structural engineer. We want them to come in and give us a degreed opinion on is that thing going to move or not. By the way, it's a scientific fact. They will tell you that the foundation has officially moved if one of several things happen. One, the elevation measurement from the highest point of the house to the lowest point exceeds 2 inches. That's usually a sign that you have a foundation problem. Those of you who don't think 2 inches is that much, let's say this is the pipe under your house in the foundation. It's sitting here and it moves 2 inches. So does these pipes, if they bust under the slab, we got a real problem. Now, the modern houses are more built with PVC, but the older ones, it doesn't take much for that copper to pop. All right, so we want to make sure when we're going through that we have an expert go and tell us there's multiple reasons why. Here's the drawings. We can prove to you that this house has foundation issues. Most of the structural engineers do not sell foundation. They might be affiliated with somebody, but they don't sell it. So their opinion is truly unbiased. It's truly unbiased. They're going to give you what they say, look, I think this needs to happen. Okay? So that's a huge takeaway. And this takeaway is twofold. If you don't do it like that, not only are you hurting your client and maybe the other client because of your stupidity, you're also going to make yourself look like a fool in that other agent. There's not a veteran agent out there that when another agent says, hey, we need to get a foundation guy in there, that they don't immediately cut to the chase. Do not bring Mr. Foundation salesperson, structural engineer. Now, I can't force them to do that because their inspections can be free and do whatever they want. But I can damn well tell them what my opinion is going to be if they bring the other person in to save time. Because I can tell you this. I don't care who is coming in. If they sell foundation, I ain't listening to them. And when I say ain't, it's not because I have bad vocabulary. I say it to emphasize something. I am not going to be listening to that person. I don't care what their credentials are. If they don't know how, if they don't have a degree in how to measure that, I am not listening to them. So I'm going to save someone a lot of time. I'll be like, well, you can go do whatever you want. Just do not ask me to do a repair that person goes. You want to get a structural engineer? I'm listening. Let me give you another takeaway. It's great. I can't believe we haven't done this topic in a long time. When you go through and you're choosing the structural engineer versus the regular engineer, we have to be super particular because when you're talking with the other agent, if you ask them for that particular foundation person, and then you come back and say we want a structural engineer in there, the next conversation that will make you look foolish is about who pays for it. Now, this is one of the greatest things about being a longtime agent is you pick up a lot of stuff that the other agents don't like. And you learn on your own what they do and what they don't. One of the most rookie mistakes, and quite honestly, no common sense type of decision or understanding, is when a buyer agent tells the listing agent, we need your seller to do, well, I'm going to say a structural inspection, but I'll say any type of inspection just to mock this point. Y'all, let me give you one of the biggest takeaways for generic real estate. These are buyer inspections, not seller inspections. They're buyer inspections. When a buyer tells my seller to go and get a foundation inspection because some other idiot said it might have a problem, I ain't doing that. You know why? Because my seller's been living there. And they have to fill out a seller's disclosure. And if they had problems with the foundation, legally they're obligated to actually say in the seller's disclosure that I've had problems with the foundation. What makes you think that just because you came in here, hired an idiot that you shouldn't have, that's strike one against you. Now strike two is, you actually think we're going to pay for that? This ain't my inspection. It's yours. In fact, you could also argue, why the hell do you want me to go get it? Don't you think your client might insist that you go get your own damn structural engineer? What if I'm friends with mine? What if my engineer would never tell somebody anything against me? That's stupid in itself. There's so much stupidity that surrounds asking a seller to do an inspection. So many different things. One of them is bad enough. Now look, y'all, I prep a lot of my agents and a lot of students about expectations and your presence and the image that you present. You just think about making that mistake in front of another agent. The moment you ask them to do it, all those things go in that person's head. They immediately go, this person, 1, doesn't know what they're doing. 2, maybe probably new. 3, ridiculously stupid if they think I'm even going to consider that. 4, wasting time. If they're bitching about this, God forbid, what else is in there? There are a series of bad events that come from that statement. So this is a huge takeaway in this process. And it's such a pet peeve. A week does not go by where I don't get 5 calls where my agent says, well, they're telling the seller they want them to go get inspection. And I go right back at them and go, you go get your own damn inspection. By the way, if you want to link the conversations to comparable things, same etiquette with the survey. Should never ask the seller to pay for a survey. Common sense reason behind it, because 1, it's a buyer-lender requirement. Seller has nothing to do with it. 2, the seller's the one that's leaving. Why do they give a damn whether that survey is right or not? You're the one who should be verifying it. You're the one who should be paying for it. Buyers pay for the surveys, not sellers. Okay, that's another huge takeaway in a contract negotiation and understanding inspection. No, inspections is more contract negotiation than the actual contract itself. Because everything we do is negotiation. These tips that I'm giving you right now, these are not the tips you find in a book. These are the tips you learn through long, hard years of how to respond back at somebody. And you learn it gives you an edge from a negotiation standpoint. When you can point out that somebody didn't know that, you're like, that person is a fool. I am not going to do one thing they say because there's no way they can possibly understand what they're doing if they suggested that. Now, some people might be watching this going, God, what a dick. This guy's like, just a complete asshole about, if this happens. No, I'm not. It's a fact. If you look at that, the way it's designed, you're the one who probably is more the jerk. You're the one who shouldn't be asking for that. You can also go down the route, well, my client asked me to do it, and I have to do what they tell me to do. Yeah, but you're supposed to advise them. So here's another takeaway, and it does apply to the inspections. You cannot just sit there, the old mentality, well, we can ask for the moon, and if we don't get it, whatever. Some people think that there's no consequences. I hear this a lot too. Why don't we ask for everything? What's going to happen? Maybe the seller kicks you off their property and files a trespass against you. I've had that happen before. Maybe they ban you for coming in ever again. Maybe they say they're not going to do anything that they would have done had you not been a jerk. There's a huge series of events. There is a consequence. The investors are the worst. They'll ask for all these things, and then you're like, cannot think I'm going to do that. Why would I bother? Why would I bother and go through all that stuff? So we have to make sure that those expectations are being set, that we know what to expect when we go in, when we go out of the house, what to say. These all flow back to your negotiation skills. It makes you stronger. You should be able to have a competitive advantage over another agent if they don't have the type of training that you should have. That's why we pride ourselves in our guys, and I used to think it's a shameless plug until I stopped thinking it was shameless, because what we do in our particular group is help the guys with those types of things. We always flash that joinswr.com wherever we go, because that domain basically tells you a couple of things. It shows you that we don't care whether you do it full or part-time, but it also shows you all these things we're talking about. What I give on this radio and this podcast is like 1/10 of what my guys get all the time. We go through this with them. We don't want them going out and making some dumb mistake. And that's the problem with brokerage in general. You bring this herd of cattle in. I don't know why I said cattle. It sounded good. you teach them one time, and they're supposed to know. They don't know a damn thing. You cannot have that expectation in there. So we make sure that the guys know the intricacies to this. Because quite honestly, it's the back doors that keep you from, or that allow you to go to the front door. Some of the people can't ever get back there because they don't know any better. You need to know these things when you're talking to someone. It matters. And that is what I spend a lifetime telling people, that real estate's easy, it's simple. The hardest part, though, are the things that you don't think matter, and they do. Because if you're new and you treat the inspection process as just another step, that's probably one of the most important steps of where you're separating yourself from somebody else. It's also one of the most important steps that you're showing your client you know what you're doing. Almost every client will tell you they think they know what their house is worth. They know how to price it. You know what they won't say? What repairs should or should not be done. And that alone makes this process more difficult. Mike, I really do.
Or whether they should actually do a repair, even a simple repair, or not, because it could lead to even more issues and more repairs if it's not worded correctly.
So you know what? That's a great transition to the next topic, and I don't even want to forget it. So we're going to do it now. This is a great takeaway, because what he just said has a lot of merit. So I'm going to really give you some help. This is really good. I really, it's my show and I'm biased towards it, but God, there's some good information on here. It took me years to figure out some of this stuff. So we'll do both sides of this for you. If you're a buyer agent, air conditioning came back as questionable, possibly some coolant leakage, the differential, maybe the upstairs unit wasn't working at all. There's some issues, right? As a buyer agent, when you draft the amendment on an air condition, you always tell the seller you want the repair done. Because on the other side of it, if the listing agent is smart, they'll be like, look, that sounds like a lot of trouble. How about we give you $500 or $600 instead of that? Now, what Mike was talking about just then, this is exactly what happens. If you're a buyer agent, let's even make it $2,000. Because some people will be like, oh, let's take the $2,000 and we won't have to fix the air condition. You take the money, you get the AC guys out there. They're like, this is running on the old system. They're like, what do you mean? They go, well, they don't build the Freon coolant in there anymore. It's different because they can't switch it out as much as they used to because it became an environmental issue, so they stopped it. So this unit has to be replaced. So you persuaded your client to take $2,000 because you thought that was easier and better. And now you just cost them $10,000 because now they do have to go buy a new one. You don't ever let the seller give money towards the guts. Roof, electric, never. Because what Mike said was absolutely correct. What started to be something small ends up being ridiculous and a lot of trouble. That's a huge takeaway from this show, and probably one of the more intelligent ones in real estate, knowing that can happen. And knowing hypocritically how to handle it on both sides. It is hypocritical, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I tell them all the time. I'm like, I'm going to be two different agents. If we're the buyer, we're the seller.
Mike, that is a great comment that's not used enough. I like that because we're going to be two different guys. We're going to tell you two different things because we have expertise in both sides of this. And in that particular case there, that is a very good one because we are in no circumstances for guts taking money on it. If it's like we talked about last week, a light bulb or maybe the door scratches because the dog's annoying in the back, no problem. $500 good? Fantastic. I'll take care of it. That's fine. Air conditioner? No, I have to tell you, and everybody knows this about me. I pride myself on my ethics and my genuineness and my integrity because it's all I got. It really is. And I think one of the hardest things I do is when I'm supposed to be supporting my client and I do that spiel from the seller side where I'm like, because I do this. I tell them, look, the air conditioning had some marks against it. Let's first try to offer them some money and see if we can be done with it and we don't have to repair it. They're like, well, no, I might be able to do it cheaper. I go, you're not listening to me. I go, if we have to do it.
Rabbit hole.
That's right. We're going to find it. And when you want to talk about rabbit hole, a freaking air conditioner it's like a den. It's a rabbit den is what it is. You don't want to do that. So it's hard for me because I do find myself to be have a lot of integrity. But when I tell them that, I feel dirty because I know why I'm telling them that. I know there's a possibility. Now, I'll tell you why I feel really bad about it. I know years past, I heard it eventually it ended up where there was a problem, like an air conditioner had to be replaced. Or the agents, they see me at a function like, that cost me $10K. I go, what do you mean? They go, the air conditioner wasn't just the coolant. It was the radiator. It was the other
coil.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard on me because I'm trained to do it like that. I train others to do it, and I know it's the right thing for my client. It's actually very good negotiation techniques. Doesn't make it right though. It's just a little grimy,
But really, so everybody understands, from a seller standpoint, why would we want to give money instead of repairing it? Well, because if the repair amendment is written, fix the AC, well, then we have to fix the AC no matter the issue.
And we have to fix the AC and anything that comes up again.
Right. Not a specific issue.
See, that's the problem. They told us to go in and fix it. And there are some people, God, I love this episode. God, this was by far one of the better episodes. There are some people that go in and they do fix the repair. One of the coils, that's a popular one. The coil's busted. And it's expensive. It's probably $2,300, $2,400. So they fixed the coil. But when they went in there, they knew damn good and well the coolant was leaking. They could see it. But they say, I was asked to fix the compressor or the coil. I did it. You didn't ask for anything else. Sellers are held to a higher standard. You own that house till you close. Just because you've negotiated repairs, that doesn't mean you just get to say, well, it's not my problem now. That air conditioner repair that you shouldn't have done anyways, now, as a seller, that becomes a shit. Now I got to fix this too. Now it's not even a choice. Now you have to fix it. That is a great conversation. So many people don't know. The most awesome part about this show, outside of Mike Dallas being on it, is that those are things that do not come up in a book or even in your third or fourth year. Sometimes you have to experiment them. And y'all, if you want to know when we talk about experience, this here, that's it. This gray shit that's on my chin, that's where it's come from. It's from learning the hard way. I wasn't taught how to do that. I learned. I learned by somebody else sticking it to me. I learned by someone else saying, I'll give you $3,000. I'm like, that's great. Me going back to my buyer, look, I got you $3,000. Buyer comes back, I have to pay $7,000 to replace this. You learn. By the way, when you learn, that learn usually is followed by you paying the difference. But
the other side of that is that $7,000 that they had to pay, it could have been 10.
Yeah.
You did get them 3. I mean, you did help, but
I mean, look, y'all, these are things that are very difficult to find. And these are live things that we do. So you have to understand the negotiation of the art of negotiation and the operating procedure of negotiation, or you're going to cost your client a lot of money. It's funny. I never thought I was worth a damn with anything I did. Still don't, for that matter. I actually think I'm a POS to some extent. But I will tell you, I do have a very unique, direct knowledge of real estate. I have a very good understanding as to what should and what should not happen. And when someone says, well, I probably need to go with an experienced agent. There's a lot of truth to that. Because if you go with someone brand new, they don't know that stuff. And the chances of them costing you money are high. Now, look, we also pride ourselves that we have a lot of new people. A lot of our new people watch this show. They're like, well, thanks. Now you just screwed me. My guys should know how I feel about that. My guys are not new. Because in our firm, they have to go through me before they go anywhere else. So they're not new. They're going through me regardless. So they're protected that way. Most agents aren't. Most agents have to do that on a whim. It is so easy being a new agent to say, I'm going to take that $3,000. My client's going to think I kick ass. And you're right, temporarily. Especially in July when we're on a huge 100-degree run and then a week later it collapses. This is a huge part of what we do. It's a magnified piece of it. So many people screw it up. I weep for the common real estate agent with no support. I weep for them because there's just no way. There's no way they can do it. Yeah, it's funny. Gary Keller is huge on the team mentality. In fact, it's one of the primary reasons we brought our independent group back in, because Gary himself, and this is not, I'm not double talking him. I've never double talked him. This is a vision that he's had for years, and he's putting into fruition and execution now. He believes the future is in the teams, because he believes that by common sense, the team has more resources for a new agent. Now, there are a lot of brokerages that go to where they substitute coaching with that, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Anything's better than nothing, but unless that coach is available at 9:30 to look at that repair amendment, ain't gonna do you a damn bit of good. You're still gonna make that same mistake. Actually, the worst part about that is you do it, and then you meet your coach once a week, and they ask what you did, and you tell them, and they're like, "Did you sign it already?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, that sucks, because now we can't do shit with this." It's the old saying, I can't put the shit back in the horse. It's already done. So these are really important things about understanding negotiations, repairs, how we go through it, why we do certain things that we do. There is a art, a logic, and you're supposed to have it. And that common everyday agent, and I keep saying that because that's who you interact with when you're out there. Most of the teachings that I do and most of the shows that I do, it's not for my guys. They already know. It's for the other person that's coming in that we have to watch. We know that they're capable of doing something ridiculous because they have not been trained. Love the repair conversation. Let's see, we're at 2:40. Let's talk about some of the minor things in there, and then we'll go straight to ending with how we put this on paper. Okay. So we talked last time that there are some issues that are gray when it comes to what you should ask for. We've made it clear that it's our opinion. This isn't an operation procedure. In our group and the people that I teach, it's our opinion that as a buyer, I should only ask for things that are material to the house. Mike said them earlier. If the stove doesn't work, if the shower doesn't work, if the air conditioning doesn't work, if the heater doesn't work.
Everyday essential things that you can't really live without.
Day to day, right, Mike? Day to day. They have to work. Everybody should agree that those should be things that should be asked for. Every seller should be told, if one of those things are broken, you should fix them. Okay? Where we get into another negotiation nightmare. It's funny, I was thinking you could write a book on the process. There's enough material. If you go through everything that happens, there's enough material to write a book on it. The one that's gray, and it's more significant because it causes more terminations because of the lack of understanding and the stupidity too of all the parties, the two agents and the buyer and seller. Even if the buyer and seller are driving the insanity and the stupidity of this, the agent's failing too if they don't put a stop to it, or they don't know better how to put a stop to it. All right. So some of the gray areas. We mentioned one last show and at the beginning of this one. Let's do the GFCI. That's a popular one. Okay. And the GFCI is, I'm going to condense this conversation because the GFCI is representing all other types of little things. The doorknob's loose. There's dog scratches on the door. The pet door is loose. The surround sound speaker, the screw, all these are the same thing. Okay. They all fall into the same category. Are they really necessary? Now, like the GFCI, because there are people that will tell you it is necessary, but in reality, you kind of want to look at it and go, is it? Do you even know what a GFCI is? Most people don't even know what a GFCI is. Yet an inspector tells them, oh, you're going to need that. Oh, I better get it. Do you know what the GFCI is? By the way, those of you who don't know what GFCI is, that was to stop the old, those of you, God knows why you ever had a toaster near the sink filled with water. If it dropped, those were the things that finally cut those off. That's what they created those for.
And they're put near most of your near water, your bathrooms, the kitchens, the utility rooms,
bathtubs, especially bathtub where you have something. There's a lot of electrocutions. So some people would hear that and go, "Well, that sounds really important." I'm like, "Well, let's break into important. Was it important that someone plugged in a radio, in the 80s and put it on their bathtub and not thinking that it's slippery and it might fall in? I don't know if that's important or if that's just, we can't save those people. We can't save those people. So is it really important? And I'm being serious. Some people think I'm joking right now. I'm being dead serious. No pun intended. Is that GFCI really necessary? Well, seems like we've been going through it for 60 or 70 years without it. My guess would be like, no, not really. Is it nice to have it? And is it better to have it if we have a choice? Sure. But that's where we're at. Do you have a choice? Is it a choice now to say, I want that seller to put the GFCI in? Because now we are getting to, is that day to day? Mike, do I need that GFCI to live in this house right now? That personal opinion, I think it annoys me because I know that I'm smart enough not to put any stupid shit by water. And that GFCI actually irritates me because when it rains, it screws up my plugs outside. And if you use power to your grilling and stuff, that sucks. So I actually don't like the GFCI, but I get it. But to say it's mandatory, yeah, there you go. 70% of the agents right now drafting contracts. GFCIs need to be repaired. GFCIs need to be installed. Why? Because you want it? Here's another mentality you have to think about it too. This is important too because it goes for a lot of stuff as well. When you tell a seller that they need to fix something that they've lived with for 10, 15, 20, or 30 years, you might not know it, but you're pretty much calling them an idiot. Because you're pretty much saying, well, look, that's a safety hazard. Someone could get shot.
Whose safety?
Yeah. Who? Your dumbass or mine? You're basically telling the seller's listening to this, and they're like, so what? I'm a moron because I haven't replaced it? You don't think I know about the GFCI? I know it. I chose not to put it in. But now I'm stupid because you think that you're basically telling them that they don't know what they're doing.
Well, also it's a code thing. I mean, GFCIs were they started putting them in several years back. In 3 years, there's going to be something else, and the people now that don't have them, what do you tell them? I mean, it's like it's code. House built in the 40s, 50s, 60s.
You've been doing radio for 3 years with me. This is your best show by far, competency-wise, because how you're linking all these things together. That is exactly right. Now we get into, where do the codes stop? At what point do we say, because see, here's the hypocrisy. Let's say you ask for the GFCI. Well, what about the water heater not up? What about the water heater that doesn't have a pan? Now, let's joke about that one, okay? We get this. These are the gray areas that we're talking about. It will be on the report that the water heater does not have the required overdraft pan under it. And you'll have a buyer, or worse, a buyer agent who didn't correct the buyer, ask for that pan. I started to show off with, I'm the least mechanical person in the world. It's true. But I always pride myself that I have a lot of common sense. Folks, water heater pan in an attic ain't going to do a damn thing if that thing breaks. Because when a 55 to 60 gallon tank breaks, a little circumference this big is not going to hold the water. All that thing can do is maybe give you like maybe a 5-second warning that you're about to have a horrible day. And I think what it really does is just alert you like, oh, that sucks. It's about to, and then you get up there and it busts. The pan is not a safety hazard. The pan is not necessary. Over the years, someone said probably would help to have a pan in there. Do we tell them to do it? Want to continue with the gray area? The laundry vents. Houses up until 1990 had the laundry vent vented into the ceiling because it made sense to somebody that it's lint and it's being blown into an area that has insulation. Just so happened, years ago, started documenting that a few houses burned down because that was hot, flammable substance, and it started a fire. My guess is if they had really done their research, there was something else going wrong up there that caused those fires. But whatever. So the code changes. The code now changes to where it wasn't just convenient to blow it in there. Now you have to go up, cut a hole through the ceiling, which is a terrible thing to do, seal it, and have the air pushed and vent out to the outside. This comes up on the reports as well. In fact, the report, it says safety hazard, fire hazard, vent empties into the roof or the attic. Average person sees that, got to fix that. Tell the guy that's lived there since 1972. He's like, why? Hell, I think it's actually helped with the insulation. It's been putting that shit in there all. I mean, you cannot do those types of things. There are tons, Mike's right. There are tons and tons of safety issues. They'll always change. There'll always be something new. We cannot adapt to every code. If that was the case, we would rebuild every house that we go into. And I'll give you one final technique. And
no more historic homes.
Oh, God, don't even start there. That is a whole nother episode. I'll give you one more that I use all the time that usually will put a stop when someone's doing this to me. They'll start asking those codes, and I'll make my first objection. Then they keep on to it, and then they get down to 3 or 4. I'm like, hey, when's it going to stop? I go, the masonry on this house is 40 years old. You haven't said anything about that yet, but I got a feeling it's coming.
I'm sure there's no brick ties.
Yeah, where do we stop? My point is you can't. You'll keep going. So if you're going to keep going, why even do the 1? Why even do the 2? We don't do those things, okay? That's not the way to do this. All right, final thing to wrap all this up. Once we've identified what those repairs will be, you should have a good idea now which side you're on, what you should ask for, and what you should defend against. Once you decide to make the repairs, you're going to verbally tell the seller what it is that you want, because there's no point in writing it down and going back and forth. Well, actually, I take that back. I need to stay consistent. You need to get your amendment and draft it. The amendment, the repairs go on the amendment. It's an option 2. You send it to the seller, and then y'all will go back and verbally negotiate until y'all decide what's going to happen. Okay. Once you decide what's going to happen, whether it's the original or y'all changed it, it becomes executed. You do not have to have the repairs done in the option period. That's another common thing that new agents do. I'll never get that done. I can't get the roof done. No one asked you to. The agreement is it has to be done before close. In fact, the day before close. Now, the only other problems that we run into, and it would be another show, is when the repair is dragging and it's going to miss the close date. For instance, like in North Texas earlier this year with the freeze, it's very hard. What still is, it's hard to get a contractor. And if you need some of those contractors and you're closing, your option period's up in 2 days, you might be told 2 or 3 weeks. So there can be problems that are posed by this, but for the most part, the repairs should be done as a buyer agent when you do your walkthrough. And we all do our walkthroughs, and we all sign off on the addendum form that says that they actually went through and walked it. It's amazing how many agents don't know that. You're going to call the seller agent the listing agent before you go, and you're going to tell them, hey, I need all the professional receipts. By the way, that's another takeaway. It has to be a professional that does it. That's not an opinion. It's in the contract. A professional has to do it. You cannot do these things on your own. That's a terrible mistake a listing agent does with the seller. Seller agrees to do the fixes. Listing agent's a rookie. They don't tell him. Seller goes, oh, I know how to do that. Mike would be one. He'd go, I can fix that. And then they go back and go, this thing's loose. Whoever did this is an idiot. And they kick it. And they're like, where's the receipt? They go, well, the seller fixed it. They go, no. Professional has to fix that. So you have to ask for the receipts. You want to make sure the receipts did what they said they were going to do. And then you want to verify when you walk the house that those repairs are done. That's the beginning to the end of how this process works. And by far, as far as I'm concerned, the most difficult one that we do. Y'all, I want to thank y'all. I am not kidding. That was one of the better shows that we've done content-wise. This is one that anybody out there should be wanting to watch for their own good, new or a long-time existing agent. I would encourage anybody who's new to the show or a new agent that religiously watches it, they should send this to friends. They should send it to people they know going through. They should send it to their clients for sure that are going through it. By the way, our show helps a lot of clients. Our show actually helps a lot of agents with their clients, because when they're having trouble with their client, they show them us, and then they're like, oh, well, maybe I am being out of line here. Okay. So tell them about it. And even from a recruiting standpoint, if you're trying to recruit somebody, use stuff like this. Go, you should know these types of things. You should know all these types of things. You should have people support you and able to do all these things. So great show. By far one of the best content ones that we've done. I want to thank everybody like I always do. Appreciate you. Hopefully this was one of the better ones for you too. And you're going to get a lot of value out of it as well, because that's all we are trying to do is make sure we're enhancing the value for any agent out there. We want better real estate agents. It doesn't have to just be ours. Other agents from other firms that are better help us too. So the goal is universal all across the board. Y'all have a great one. Thanks again. We will see y'all next week.